Very, very hardened, deep underground facilities that have 20 or more feet, maybe 100 feet in some cases, of dirt, and then 6 to 20 feet of reinforced concrete, and then prefabricated steel.
Saddam's bunkers are narrow but very deep. Some burrow as much as 300 feet underground.
They're almost impervious to anything but nuclear attack or other ways of getting at them, like sealing them off in some way with special operations.
Some of them may be connected by tunnels, allowing him to move from one underground location to another.
One of the things that makes these underground structures difficult is the labyrinth network of them, and with blast doors in between. So even if you penetrate down into one compartment, say, and destroy that, then the steel doors may contain the effects of the blast. If you're on the other side, you're a quarter mile away, you're perfectly safe.
But many feel Saddam isn't risking an air assault on one of his bunkers. U.S. officials believe Saddam planned his escape months in advance, identifying safe houses and sending ahead money and supplies to his most trusted supporters. By the summer of 2003, he is likely moving from one house to the next, hiding out in private homes.
I heard stories from family friends in Baghdad and so forth that during the 91 Gulf War that he would just show up on your doorsteps and knock and say, "Do you mind if I stay with you?" And even I remember jokes among family friends and so forth saying, we have to keep the house clean. There's most likely Saddam will be coming over.
He's staying in somebody's house. That's the most likely thing. It's obvious that at least passively, a large number of people are protecting him. Otherwise, we'd have him by now.
Well, I'm sure that's the case. This is part of his effort to mix with private citizens and to keep the intelligence services guessing as to where he's going to be and who he's going to be with. I think that's all part of his survival game.
During the long summer of 2003, Saddam manages to confound U.S. military efforts to gather electronic intercepts on phone calls, faxes, two-way radio conversations, emails, even ATM transactions and electronic transfers of money.
They're very good at communication security, and they're not using telephones or walkie-talkies, things like this. They're using couriers and personal messengers and things like that to communicate.
With Saddam avoiding his bunkers and avoiding his phones, the most likely way to nab him will be through a tip.
The key is finding folks in the inner circle who'll give him up. And so far, what's the good news with Uday and Qusay? It appears the money was enough of an incentive to cause an inner circle person to dime him out.
I have very little doubt that there will people be willing, in view of his brutal torture of people and the families who harbor these deep resentments, who will be willing to turn him in.
By early August 2003, U.S. forces are accelerating their drive to flush Saddam out. Daily, they are capturing important members of his former regime, and with the deaths of his sons, his inner circle is likely getting smaller and smaller. There's a growing confidence among American officials that Saddam Hussein's days are numbered.
He's essentially a man hiding in the rubble of his country, and with a price on his head, with a large and effective army searching for him, a joint task force with all kinds of really effective commandos and intelligence people searching for him every day. I'd bet quite a lot of my own money on the fact that we'd get him.
By the fall of 2003, Saddam Hussein is still at large, having eluded all attempts to capture him. In the wake of the failure to find Saddam, the U.S. creates a new task force, 121. Headed by Special Operations, it includes conventional Army forces as well as intelligence units from the CIA.
This was the first time you brought them together under a chain of command where the CIA itself was in a position to support this particular military unit that was carrying out these operations, where you could get intelligence that was real-time, that was sensitive, that had to be acted upon quickly, and you had the forces that were able to respond to that direction and move quickly.
With an organization on the ground capable of exploiting intelligence with lightning speed, Task Force 121 steps up its efforts to find more people with tribal ties to Saddam, people who might be protecting him. Even as Secretary Rumsfeld visits Iraq in early December, the net is closing in on Saddam. On Friday, December 12th, a member of Saddam's clan is caught in Baghdad.
There was something about his background that drew our initial interest in him. We were very much interested in talking to that individual.
U.S. officials refuse to reveal his identity. Under interrogation, the man agrees to tell them where Saddam is hiding. The task force strikes quickly.
This operation was carried out within a 10-hour period, from the time of questioning him, developing the information, and then acting upon it.
The tip leads them to the town of ad-Dawr and to an area with 2 farmhouses. Only miles from Tikrit, it is a place the 4th ID has investigated before. In the mission codenamed Red Dawn, 600 troops in the 4th ID and Special Operations Forces from Task Force 121 descend on the farmhouses under cover of darkness.
The moon had not risen. As good fortune would have it, the electricity went out in the town of ad-Dawr, which further masked our approach.
As troops from the 4th ID secure the area, Special Operations Forces search for Saddam. The informant accompanies them.
He was able to describe that there was an underground hiding place.
At first, there is some confusion.
Forces went to the wrong house, then they finally focused in on the correct house, and then they began a methodical search.
At 8:26 that night, they find a crack in the ground under a lean-to next to a mud hut. When the soldiers examine the crack, they uncover a hidden door to what turns out to be a hole 6 feet deep.
It was very difficult to detect, even with somebody who knew generally where it was supposed to be located.
They pulled back a small piece of carpet, again found a small block of styrofoam that was covered with some earth, removed that, and they clearly saw a man down there.
We were prepared for direct fire contact, but did not have it.
There was some initial resistance. It appears he was clubbed on the side of the head.
Although Saddam is armed with a pistol, he offers no further resistance.
He was pulled out. He said, I am Saddam Hussein, President of Iraq, and I'm willing to negotiate.
The hole he has been hiding in has only an air pipe and fan to provide ventilation. There is no plumbing. The crawl space is approximately 8 feet long, enough for one person to lie flat. Nearby is a squalid 2-room hut where Saddam had been staying. In the bedroom, the troops find new underwear, slippers, and shampoo. Fruit and chocolate bars litter the filthy makeshift kitchen. In the hut, the troops recover 2 AK-47s, as well as $750,000 in $100 bills, money Saddam has been using to buy his security in his 8 months on the run. 2 other men trying to flee the scene are also arrested. Contrary to some reports, they were not bodyguards. One was his cook, the other was a relative of the cook.
He knows how to stay alive, and he knows that there's a time to adopt a fairly low profile. So he wasn't traveling with this great retinue.
His captors take Saddam by helicopter, first to Tikrit, then to an undisclosed location believed to be the detention center at Baghdad airport. A tattoo on his hand and old scars help identify him, as do former aides like Tariq Aziz, who is also in custody there. As another way of confirming his identity, the head of the Coalition Provisional Authority, Paul Bremer, invites 4 former opponents of Saddam, who are now members of the Iraqi Governing Council, to meet with him.
It was important for the Iraqi Governing Council to lay eyes on him and to confirm that this indeed was Saddam Hussein, which they did.
I found him very defiant, very unrepentant. He felt absolutely no remorse towards the crimes he has committed against the Iraqi people. Very unapologetic.
In the United States, it is now Saturday afternoon, Washington time. Secretary Rumsfeld calls President Bush.
I said that the first reports are almost always wrong, and I don't want him to take this aboard as a fact, but that it appears that we have Saddam Hussein in custody. And he said, well, if you're cautioning me on first reports, it must be good news, and it is good news, and that's terrific.
5 o'clock the next morning, President Bush is informed that DNA tests have positively confirmed Saddam's identity. Although the U.S. has long maintained that it has samples of Saddam's DNA on file, the killings of his sons in July gave them another opportunity to collect DNA material.
They pulled it from the bodies of Uday and Qusay, and then I think that was used as the ultimate match.
With the DNA results in, Ambassador Paul Bremer announces the news at a press conference in Baghdad.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
He shows a 30-second clip from what is a 1-hour videotape of an American doctor giving Saddam a complete physical after his arrest. In the footage, the doctor was seen examining the side of Saddam's head. According to former CIA official Larry Johnson, that's where Saddam was clubbed during his capture.
He felt that there had been some damage, and the doctor checked him out. Was not checking for lice, was checking to see if there had been any kind of cut or bruise to the side of his head.
Saddam looked so weak, exhausted. It was a bad hair day for him, to be sure, just scruffy looking, and this was not the image that had been so important for his leadership following.
The news of his capture is immediately greeted with spontaneous celebrations in the streets of Baghdad. In the days that follow, information found in documents seized at the scene of Saddam's capture lead to more arrests.
They've gone out and rolled up the support network that was helping protect and hide him. And some of that support network, apparently, I think it's becoming clear, were involved with helping plan and conduct attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq.
Now, with Saddam in custody, U.S. officials can look back at some of their assumptions of his life on the run. As many had predicted, he relied on a network of family and close supporters to keep himself alive. He did not leave the country to go to Syria, Belarus, or Libya, as some had believed.
Saddam was going to stay close to home, around friends and family that he knew he could trust. He knew that just were obligated to help him by virtue of the bloodlines.
Except for the long hair and beard, the Saddam who was caught looked exactly like the Saddam that everyone knew. He had not changed his appearance, either through plastic surgery or disguise, as some intelligence sources had predicted.
You can go back now to those sources of information and know that those sources didn't know what they were talking about.
In the end, as most predicted, it was a tip that led to Saddam's capture. But since the informant was a prisoner who revealed the information under interrogation, he is not eligible for the $25 million reward, but the U.S. offers to protect his family. Saddam has now been officially designated as a POW. Eventually, he will be turned over to the Iraqis to stand trial for his crimes against the Iraqi people.
Under the tribunal law that they have adopted, he will, like everybody, have a right to defense and counsel, and the trials will be open in public, and they will meet international standards.
The hunt for Saddam is over, but here in the mountainous region of eastern Afghanistan, U.S. officials believe Osama bin Laden is hiding, protected by the fiercely independent Pashtun peoples who live there. The hunt for him has slowed to a crawl.
There's been no real significant progress in finding Osama bin Laden, and that goes down to one very fundamental flaw. We've not made it a priority.
But there's no reason to believe that the blueprint laid down in the hunt for Saddam, a dedicated task force led by special operations units, will be any less successful once applied to tracking down Osama.